So, funny thing just happened. I started this Bible study and was talking into the camera for about 2 minutes. And then I realized I didn't press record. So nobody heard anything. So, maybe that was a good thing. Anyways, chapter 19 is what we were on. Remember, we started chapter 19 2 weeks ago. This week we're doing another portion of chapter 19. Then probably next time we'll finish up chapter 19. There's a lot of stuff here. A lot of it seems to be disjointed, right? But that's okay. We talked about how it kind of connects last week or 2 weeks ago. We're going to talk a little bit more about the central main part of this speech here today. And I don't know, maybe a couple of you are watching this, maybe more than a couple of you are watching. Maybe since the numbers have ticked up, even more people are watching this. Who knows? That would be great if I've got a handful of people who are watching this. But I don't know. The times are weird. The times are strange and difficult. We all want to be in regular Bible study and regular divine service. I pray that the governor doesn't put us in purple, right? Then we're going to have to make some difficult decisions on whether or not we're going to certainly meet in person or not. I don't know, just some strange things. So, I don't know, as your pastor, I just ask you to bear with your brothers, right? St. Paul tells us in Ephesians, I believe chapter 4, and he also tells us in Romans. We need to bear with our brothers' weaknesses, bear with our brothers' sins, in and through all things. Because I don't think anybody has the answer. Nobody knows what to do. There appears to be light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, right? April? But I don't know. Hopefully there is. And maybe we can get to some normalcy. But until then, this is probably going to be a difficult winter. And it'll be good for all of us, myself included, to offer and extend continued grace and mercy to everybody involved in all aspects of my life. So, anyways, as per usual, we're going to go ahead and read of all of chapter 19. It not only is it the word of our Lord, so it's good for us to do that, but to figure out the context of what we're talking about, right? Because we're going to actually pick up in verse 5. And I think try and make it to verse 19. That's a lot of verses. So we'll see. All right. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel, and say to them, You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Every one of you shall revere his mother and his father, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols, and make for yourself any gods of cast metal. I am the Lord your God. Excuse me. When you offer a sacrifice of peace offerings to the Lord, you shall offer it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten the same day that you offer it, or on the day after, and anything left over until the third day shall be burned up with fire. If it is eaten at all on the third day, it is tainted, it will not be accepted, and everyone who eats it shall bear his iniquity, because he has profaned what is holy to the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from his people. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. You shall not steal, you shall not deal falsely, you shall not lie to one another. You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord. You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain with you all night until morning. You shall not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. Verse 15. You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not stand up against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Verse 19, you shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your cattle breed with a different kind. You shall not sow your field with two kinds of seed, nor shall you wear a garment of cloth made of two kinds of material. If a man lies sexually with a woman who is a slave assigned to another man, and yet not ransomed or given her freedom, a distinction shall be made. They shall not be put to death, because she was not free. But he shall bring his compensation to the Lord, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram for a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram and the guilt offering before the Lord for his sin that he has committed, and he shall be forgiven for his sin that he has committed. When you come into the land and plant any kind of tree or food, then you shall regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you, and it must not be eaten. And in the 4th year all of its fruit shall be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat of its fruit, to increase its yield for you. I am the Lord your God. You shall not eat any flesh with the blood in it. You shall not interpret omens or tell fortunes. You shall not round off your hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. I am the Lord. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute, lest the land fall into prostitution and the land become full of prostitution. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out, and so make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. When a stranger sojourns with you and in your land, you shall do him no wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You shall do no wrong in judgment, in measures of length or weight or quantity. You shall have just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And you shall observe all my statutes and all my rules and do them. I am the Lord. All right, lots of stuff there. Now, remember, this seems disjointed, but it's not, right? From last Bible study. Things are connected at the beginning and the end. So there's kind of two different portions here in this speech, and they kind of have parallels with them all. And then also remember that we get to hear a lot of the commandments being spoken about again, actually being played out in time and space of how is this going to affect so-and-so? How is this going to affect your neighbor, right? So how can I break my first commandment? Oh, Leviticus 19, chapter 19, verse 4. That'll tell me how to do it, right? Second commandment, verse 12. So we actually see these things, right? Shows us what the law looks like. All right. Oh, goodness. So let's jump in here in verse 5, okay? Because we have two different types of offerings that are taking place here. So chapter 19, verse 5 through 20. I'll go ahead and reread that. 5 through 10. Excuse me. I'm all over the place today. Verse 5 through verse 10. When you offer a sacrifice of peace offering to the Lord, you shall offer it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, or on the day after. And anything left over until the 3rd day shall be burned up with fire. If it is eaten at all on the 3rd day, it is tainted, it will not be accepted. And everyone who eats it shall bear his iniquity, because he has profaned what is holy to the Lord. And that person shall be cut off from his people. Okay, so to begin with, this doesn't really make sense, right? What is the Lord talking about here? Is he just trying to keep the people away from eating spoiled meat because there's no refrigeration back then or any of that sort of stuff? I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all, okay? I think we are jumping right into the beginning of this speech, and the Lord continues to want to distinguish between holy things and common things. That isn't to say that common things are bad, but there is this distinction between holy things and common things. And we've seen this throughout our study of Leviticus, right? When the priests wear certain robes, those are holy robes. They're robes that are set aside and distinguished for a certain purpose. So when the priest goes into the tabernacle and he puts on his priestly garments, right, and the turban and all of this, He's literally putting on his office so that when he's wearing these priestly vestments, he is standing in the office as this priest. Okay? When he takes them all off, he's outside. He's not in that priestly office. Okay? So we have the distinguish there. Those clothes are holy clothes. They distinguish an office. Regular clothes outside, they're common. They're not evil, they're just common. And that's fine. So here again, I think the exact same thing's taking place. We've got a distinguishing between holy and common. And obviously, we already see that this is the peace offering, right? Oh, I have my heater on. You're probably hearing a buzzing in the background. I have failed in this Bible study. Sorry, guys. Just lots of distractions for you. You probably already tuned out. I'm going to turn that off just to make sure it doesn't go on again. There we go. All right. So, this is the peace offering. Already we know that this is a holy thing, right? Peace offering. It's a holy thing already, which is fine. It's good. But let's keep it as a holy thing. Let's not use it or pretend that it's common. That's the whole purpose here, right? So, and not only that, this is the only holy object that the lay people are allowed to actually handle. All the other holy objects are in the sanctuary, in the tabernacle, in the holy place, in the holy of holies, right? And all of those are to be handled by priests, maybe some Levites, depending on what it is, and the high priest. But here's the only thing that the lay people are allowed to handle that is holy. Okay, so that kind of sets it aside as something special, even amongst the special things. And they would eat this meal there. Remember, we've talked about this before. This is a participation in the actual sacrifice. So when they sacrifice the animal, and then they burn a portion of the animal on the altar, the rest is given to the family there, right? Well, a portion is given to the priest, I believe. But the rest is given to the family, and the family may eat it there in the tabernacle, in the presence of the Lord, and receive the blessings of the Lord. And then he can take that meat home, right? And he can share it with his family and his invited guests. So again, this is this continual, what is being given at the tabernacle is actually being given in time and space, and these people can actually consume it and take it and eat it and bring it to their family and consume it in this communal meal. And this is what this peace offering is for. But if you don't consume it all the first day or the second day, you've got to burn it up, right? Why? Because you don't just let holy things lie around unpreserved. You don't let holy things sit in the corner and so that they may become tainted and may become rotten and may get mold and mildew and bacteria and bugs and maggots. You don't allow holy things to do that. Okay? As soon as you're doing that, giving this option to the holy things to be tainted, you're treating them not only as not holy, but not even, well, maybe common, but even unclean, right? If you allow something to become defiled, if you allow meat to spoil, especially back then, that's not treating it as holy. And so the Lord is actually setting this apart and saying, okay, this gift of peace offerings that I'm using not only to physically nourish you, but spiritually give you the gifts and the blessings that are poured out. Don't treat it like you would anything else. Don't treat it like a common meal. We see the same thing happening in 1 Corinthians, right, with Paul. It's not so much the communion meal. They're not getting drunk on communion wine there. But what's happening is you've got the people meeting at house churches. And so it's the rich person who's got a big enough house to house the entire 25, 50 member congregation, right? But before that, they were having these meals of kind of unity, communion they would call, but they weren't actually communion. It was the meals beforehand. And they would be inviting their best friends over and inviting the rich people over while the poor people were sitting out in the courtyard waiting for church service to start. The rich people are all in there and they're just consuming and getting drunk and then treating the divine service as something common, as something, it's just an extension of a dinner party. Not a good thing, right? Not a good thing at all. All right, so I think I got everything there, right? So if you're treating this holy thing that gives the blessings of God as common or as unholy or as unclean, then you're literally committing spiritual suicide. You're literally saying to God, your holy things and your holiness I despise. I don't even care enough about to take care of. It's not a good place to be, right? All right, so then we got the gleanings. We heard about that. And the gleanings, we see this take place a number of different places in the Old Testament. We see it take place with Ruth, right? She goes gleans at the threshing floor of Boaz. And here's something. What type of man was Boaz before he met his wife? He was ruthless. It's ruthless. Anyways, I think that's an awesome dad joke. So, but you see this also take place with the New Testament, right? You see the apostles. There's a couple times where they're actually picking grain as they're going through fields. And the Pharisees don't like that at all because they're actually doing it on the Sabbath, and that's supposed to be work and blah, blah, blah. So we see this gleaning stuff, right? Don't harvest the field all the way up, right? You got to leave a portion of the harvest, and anything that's fallen on the ground, you're not allowed to take that up. You got to leave that too. And then if you're cultivating grapes, you got to do the same thing. Don't take it all the way up to the hedge. And if any of the grapes bunches have fallen on the ground, you got to leave them there. And you leave them there for the sojourners. You leave them there for the aliens, right? That's who you leave them there. Aliens, visitors, right? People passing through. And for the poor people. And so what's interesting that we have here is God is actually setting up in his own word and in his own people's community a safety net, right? A social safety net. He's, for lack of a better term, he's actually setting up here a way in which that these people can be taken care of. It's kind of a welfare system, if you will, but a spiritual type of welfare system, right? So this is a religious and a moral duty. A religious duty because it's commanded by God, but it's commanded by God so that for the express purpose that the poor are taken care of. This is why God's doing it. So it's a moral duty as well, which is good. It's a great thing to do, right? So in a way, you could see it as these gleanings are an offering that's made to God, but not taken into the tabernacle, so that from God's hand, he can supply the needs of other people, like he does in the tabernacle with the peace offerings, but also like he does with the tithes, right? So the tithes are not seen as our offering to God, but it's what God has already granted to us. And so God is actually supplying with his own stuff for the good of the priests and the Levites. That's what tithing was back then, remember? Because they don't have any land, and they don't have any property, and they don't have any crops or anything like that. They purely rely on the people, and that's why they tithe, and that's why it's a requirement for tithing. Well, here it seems as if this is a tithe not given to priests, right? But to the poor and the aliens, and it's almost as if God is treating these least of these as priests, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. Okay, verses 11 through 18. Let's talk about this a little bit, right? You shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely. You shall not lie to one another. You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of the Lord. And so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Okay, here we go. So we've got what's happening here is God is actually concerned for the abuse of his people. Okay, and all of the things that we see here in 11 through 18, they're kind of got an interesting way about them, because it seems as if Yahweh is distinguishing certain situations that that can't be taken care of in a court of law. Okay, so the big capital crimes and punishments that can be taken in the court of law, these seem to be kind of the things that can't. Although you might say, well, what about the thou shalt not steal? Well, most of the time, stealing is done in secret, right? It's not too often, especially back then. It wasn't as if armed robbery was happening where someone would bust into somebody else's house with a gun in their face, or I guess a slingshot in their face, right, and demand their new TV, or I guess what would they have? Their new Camel. That wouldn't be the case, right? This would probably be, that might happen, but I think this is more along the lines of things that are done in secret. So you've got this, thou shalt not steal, which is obviously speaking about the seventh commandment. But then the next section in there, it's forbidding, it forbids the denial of your theft too, right? If you get caught, fess up, right? And if you get caught, the next thing is you're not allowed to cover it up with lies, okay? And then the next thing, the last thing that you certainly cannot do, you're not allowed to do, is try to win the argument and win the day by bringing God's name upon it. Because God only places his name for good, right? When God places his name upon something, he places his name for the purpose of good. And here you've stolen, and now you're trying to prove that this stolen property is your own. Don't you dare bring God's name into it to justify what you're doing. That's breaking of the second commandment. That's getting a hair's width away, if not actually committing sacrilege. It's a huge ordeal. Don't bring God's name to bear and to help you prove a sin. Not a good thing. All right. So now we got 13 through 14 we'll talk about here, right? 13 through 14, you shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain with you all night until the morning. You shall not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. So here we're talking again about the Lord setting up provisions in order to protect the vulnerable from exploitation. So the way in which the original Hebrew sounds to begin with is the first part of 13 is you're forbidden to withhold money or property, right? And then you're also forbidden to use your position or your influence in order to gain money or property. So if you're a rich, influential person, don't you dare use that as leverage to either get away from paying somebody what you owe them or stealing their stuff just because everybody is going to kowtow to you because you're a powerful rich ruler. Don't do that. Which seems like a common thing to do, but evidently we've got to put that out there, right? Then he's also setting up the protection of day laborers, right? If somebody works in your field, give them money. Don't wait until the next day. Give them money because they're day laborers. And they seem to be the poorest people in society. And now they've just worked their entire day with the expectation that they are going to get paid so that they can get some food on the table for their family. Don't you hold it in your hand until the next day, forcing them to come back and coercing them to come back and keep working for you. Pay the laborer his due. Okay. Then we've got to protect the deaf and the blind. And this makes sense, although unfortunately I guess we got to lay it out, right? That our Lord would actually put provisions of saying, hey, we don't do this to the less fortunate, to the disabled, to those who, because of the fallenness of human nature by no fault of their own, have some sort of deficiency. We don't use our full physical prowess in order to make them smaller or coerce them or get something out of them or exploit them or whatever the case may be. And this has an actual literal sense to it. You don't curse a deaf man, right? And you don't put a rock in front of a blind man so he falls down. But it also has more of a metaphorical understanding too of the eighth commandment stuff, right? So we should not bear false witness. We should fear and love God, so that we speak everything in its most appropriate way, right? The kindest of ways. We explain everything in the kindest of ways. We bend over backwards to do this. So we don't actually spread rumors in private. Right? We don't try and set up the fall of our brother by manipulating a situation in secret, and then that just blindsides him in public the next day. We don't do that. It's not called for us to do. All right, 15 and 16, right? What are we coming up to? Oh, goodness, we got to run out of here pretty quickly. 15 and 16 presupposes that all Israelites are involved in the local administration of God's justice. I know I didn't read that. You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor, right? You shall not go around as a slanderer amongst your people. You shall stand up, not stand up against your life of your brother. And here we've got, again, this, it takes a place in the political realm, because all adult males would actually sit in the city gates, and cases would be brought. And the entire society, right, would be judged. So somebody has a case against their brother, they bring it to the men at the city gates. And then, so everybody's judges. So literally, don't arbitrarily judge in the rich man's or the poor man's favor just because of who they are. Judge in righteousness. Doesn't matter who wins. Judge in righteousness. And then also we've got the no slander, right? This personal sort of stuff. Okay. 17 and 18. You shall not hate your brother in your heart, but shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And this is an interesting thing, because this is actually presupposing that the Israelites are actually here in a tribal society that works on payback, right? Vengeance is seen as a positive thing, because you save face and you get what's back is yours. And then also negatively, because you punish the evildoer, right? This is the whole understanding of vengeance, which is also why the Lord said, vengeance is mine. It's not for us to exact vengeance upon our brother or sister. And so that's what we've got here, right? And the strange thing is, all of the societies surrounding Israel work off of this save-face tribal society of payback. And that's what you did. But the Lord turns it on its head and says, no, you may not do that. You can't hate your neighbor. Everything has to be acted out in love, right? This is fifth commandment stuff, right? You do not harbor hatred in your heart for your neighbor. Jesus speaks about this in the Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew chapter 5. And then the Apostle John talks about it in 1 John 3, verse 15. All right. So we're called to love our neighbor, and love not as an emotion, because nobody can force an emotion out of you, but love as an actual course of action. That's what you're called to do. Okay, the last thing is a strange thing, right? Verse 19, you shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your cattle breed with a different kind. You shall not sow your field with two different kinds of seed. You shall not wear a garment of cloth made of two different kinds of metal, which is weird, right? Because here we've got, so you can't have a horse and a donkey create a mule. What about the most wonderful animal in the whole entire world, right? The liger. The tiger and the lion. Right? Or what about I can't have in one tunic, I can't have silk and cotton, or cotton and linen, or whatever. And that's weird. You're like, what's that all about? That seems a little strange, right? But again, I think what Yahweh is actually bringing to the forefront here has to do with holiness and unholy, common and unclean, right? Holy and common. These distinguishes. He's metaphorically using this, right? Because when you actually look at the livestock, that doesn't say cattle, it says livestock. And the livestock that they had, I don't think you could. One commentary said you biologically could not crossbreed the livestock that the Israelites had. So the number of different livestock that you had, they would never create progeny, right? If you try to crossbreed them. So that wasn't even an option. And then also, no self-respecting father is going to use the same field and take some barley and take some grain and mix them together and throw it out there. That seems silly too. And then also it seems silly that the Lord is putting this prohibition about having two different types of material in the same garment when the priests and the high priests have this. Just look it up. Exodus 28:6, Exodus 28:15, Exodus 39:29. It speaks about different types of yarn, and then it speaks about linen. And so you've got these two different things that are making up the tunic and the sash and the breastplate, and I think the turban as well. And it does seem to be certainly that you've got two different types of material here. So what's this about? The best guess is that it's either speaking in two ways. That is not speaking in a literal way, but it's speaking in a metaphorical way. That kind of a prohibition against intermarriage between an Israelite and a Canaanite, or an Israelite and a non-believer, right? A believer and non-believer. Or it's proverbially, I can't say that word, to distinguish, again, like what I said, what's holy from unholy. It's, again, this thing of saying, hey, I'm going to give you a visual representation of there are distinctions. There's holy things and unholy things. There's holy things and common things. Let's keep them and see them as such so that we do not defile the holy things by treating them like they're common. All right, I think that's all I got. We're going to finish up next week or the week after in regards to chapter 20. So I think that's it. Thank you for watching. Continue to love and serve your neighbor during these difficult times. And hopefully I will see you guys soon. God bless. Bye.